Welcome, everybody, to the latest edition of the Bullpen with Adam the Bull, brought to you by Bet Rivers. Coming up on today's podcast, we talk with longtime NFL analyst Charles Davis, the former defensive back. He's been doing games for the last couple of years with Iron Eagle. They're my favorite broadcast team. And Charles Davis knows the NFL inside and out, and that's why I've spoken to him for so many years. It'll be great to have him back on the podcast today. That's all coming up on this edition of the Bullpen with Adam the Bull, brought to you by Bet Rivers.
You're watching Adam the Bull on the Bet Rivers Network.
Before we get to our football conversation with the great Charles Davis, let's quickly take a look at the Guardians and the Cavaliers. The Cavs, wow, even with Donovan Mitchell, got a rare win on the road. Obviously, they weren't playing a particularly good team in the Utah Jazz. The Jazz have been struggling, but without Donovan Mitchell and with Darius Garland continuing to struggle, it's been a big, I mean, he only shot the ball 6 times. He's not scoring. But Karis LeVert, who was in the starting lineup yesterday, was fantastic. He had 26, 6, and 5. And both Evan Mobley and Jared Allen scored 21 points. They combined for 42 points, 19 rebounds, 10 assists, 3 steals, 2 blocks, and only 1 turnover. It was actually outside of Darius Garland. The starting lineup played really well, and the Cavs won 129-113. A great first half. They were up 67-47 at the half and never looked back. Now, can they get Donovan Mitchell right? Because you're not going to win games like this against good teams. The Jazz are terrible, and it was good to see the Cavs play well. It's the best game they've played in a while, but they're going to have to play well with Donovan Mitchell at a whole nother level if they're going to win when it matters when the playoffs start in 3 weeks. Meanwhile, the Cleveland Guardians ended their brief 2-game losing streak, beating the very talented Luis Castillo and the Mariners yesterday. Good, nice bounce-back win for the Guardians. We've talked about, can they come home 7-3 and get the crowd and the casual fan maybe who was not that excited about the start of the season pumped and ready to go? Well, they needed to win both these series against Seattle and Minnesota. Now they'll have a chance to do it. The rubber game is today. Guardians win yesterday 5-2, and it was an interesting game because early Luis Castillo was lights out for the Mariners the first couple of innings, and even when the Guardians got hits, it was numbers. They really didn't hit him hard. Meanwhile, Shane Bieber, who's been lights out, his only inning that he looked vulnerable was the first. Gave up a couple of hard hit balls, and then with first and second, 1 out in the bottom of the first, he gave up a bullet to I think it was Haniger. Hit a hard line drive, and it got caught, and he got out of the inning. And then Shane Bieber just locked it down. They barely hit him after that, and the Guardians got to Luis Castillo in the 4th inning. And how about that? Another home run. Bo Naylor, his first of the year. Good game for Bo Naylor after not doing anything the first 4 games of the year. He's gotten a bunch of hits the last 2 days, couple of hits and a home run. He smoked that ball off Castillo to get him going in the 4th. The Guardians were up 5-0 in this one. They took Bieber out after 6, again, only 81 pitches. I probably would have left him in for the 7th, but it's early in the season. They had a 5-run lead. The bullpen gave up some runs, obviously, in the 7th inning. Eli Morgan has struggled so far early this season, but the rest of the bullpen got it done. Emmanuel Clase did give up 1 hit, but had 2 strikeouts, including 1 to end it, and he got his 2nd save of the year as the Guardians improved to 4-2 with a 5-2 victory. We'll take a break. When we come back, NFL analyst, the great Charles Davis, he joins me next right here in the Bullpen with Adam the Bull, brought to you by Bet Rivers. We are back in the Bullpen with Adam the Bull, and football is such a monster that it doesn't really matter if it's April. It doesn't matter what time of the year it is. Football is always a popular conversation, especially in the city of Cleveland. And joining me now to talk about it, one of the best in the business. I'm not just saying it because he's here. It's my favorite broadcast team, of course, Iron Eagle and Charles Davis. And Charles is with us now, and it's great to talk to him. Thank you, Charles, for joining me. And there's never really an offseason for football, is there, anymore?
There's really not, Adam.
Yeah.
And I think you and I are similar vintage. And we can remember when in our great nation, the headline in the sports page was Pitchers and Catchers Report. And that was like a national holiday, right? We were like, oh, my goodness. They're going to spring training. This is going to be awesome. Now, I was laughing. I told someone once, I grew up in New York State. Remember the name Rocky Thompson? Do you remember that name at all?
Why? I'm
Rocky,
embarrassed to say I don't remember him.
There's a reason. Okay.
Yeah.
Rocky was the number one pick for the New York Giants one year in the 70s. Okay.
Right.
And my point being, Pitchers and Catchers Report was a headline. When Rocky Thompson was the first pick of the Giants, I believe out of North Texas State, which nowadays, if you did that, there'd be a storm, right?
Yeah. Oh, sure.
It was a blurb in the paper about that big. Giants draft Rocky Thompson. That was pretty much it. You see how far we've come. And to your point, that's why there's no off days in the NFL.
There really isn't. And like, this is supposed to, right? The first week of April, that's usually a quiet week. But what do we get? Breaking news, blockbuster trade. And I want to get to the Browns and Deshaun Watson in the draft, of course, but we got to start with this. Stefan Diggs, who obviously has been amongst the best receivers the last 6-7 years, had I say in air quotes, a down year for him, 1,160 yards and 8 touchdowns. He's 30 years old. He gets traded to the Texans for a 2025 second-round pick. The Bills also have to trade a couple of late picks. Were you surprised? I mean, like, what do you make of this deal? I was shocked when I saw this.
Have to say I wasn't overly shocked because we've kind of heard it coming for the last 2-3 seasons, haven't we, Adam?
Yeah.
With all that discussion.
Right.
Go back to the playoff game against Cincinnati a couple of seasons ago. And what appeared to be Stefan Diggs gesturing angrily towards Josh Allen. Now, we always have to remember, if you didn't hear what he said, the body language may not match the words.
Sure.
He might have been gesturing angrily about the situation. I can't believe we're losing to this team. I don't know what's going on, but it certainly looked like he was yelling at his quarterback. And you remember we all took off with that one, right?
Sure. Yep.
Josh Allen always defended Stefan Diggs. Always talked about what a great teammate he was, what a great receiver he was, and of course continued to throw him the ball because that's what smart quarterbacks do when you have a receiver of that vintage.
That's right.
But you never heard it get comfortable there. There was always some rumbling, some bump, some whatever. And it feels to me like Brandon Beane, the GM of Buffalo, if I can find him a landing spot, let's do it. And also, it looks like Buffalo's trying to get younger and less expensive in terms of salary cap and how they're going to build. They may have to start looking at Kansas City model. Your quarterback's your money. We know that.
Yeah.
But is his contract flexible enough to give you pieces that you have to go chase what they're chasing, which is a Super Bowl? And I think that's where Buffalo is headed, to try and emulate what we've seen in KC the last couple of years.
I guess the shocking part to me was not that he got traded, but that they traded him to another contender in Houston, right? I mean, C.J. Stroud had one of the all-time great rookie seasons. Obviously, before you put him in your top echelon, he's got to back it up with another year, I think. But I thought he was as good as any quarterback I ever remember as a rookie, right?
Terrific.
They're loaded already at wide receiver. Nico Collins had a breakout season. Tank Dell was on his way to an all-time rookie season as well before he got. Even Noah Brown is a decent receiver. They had Joe Mixon. Dalton Schultz is a decent tight end. I mean, they are loaded with talent at the skill positions in Houston.
They certainly are, and they didn't neglect the defense either, did they?
No.
Daniil Hunter coming over, Azeez Al-Shire taking over as a middle linebacker. I mean, they have made moves. It's gotten to be where it's very popular for all of us analysts, right? All of us together to say, but that team is going for it right now, right?
Right, yeah, sure.
Houston is definitely going to try and hey, last year wasn't a fluke. We know we're the team to beat in the division, but we're thinking big game. Now, back to your point about trading to a contender, I think it all starts with our maiden surprise should be if you trade within your division.
Sure.
Okay, that's kind of been the big no-no, right? And you remember the biggest one in recent times I always thought was Donovan McNabb going from Philadelphia to Washington.
Right.
As it turned out, Philadelphia thought he was pretty much done.
And they were right. Yeah.
And they weren't wrong, right? He had injuries. Things never clicked. It never worked there. And then I think he went to Minnesota for a hot minute. So it just didn't work. But you get outside the division, you're looking for the deal. You're looking for where it's going to work for you. Can you get what you're looking for value-wise? Buffalo felt like they were. Houston, of course, as you noted, loaded on the offensive side of the ball. They're ready to rock and roll. All I ever tell people is have caution in the AFC South. Adam, 2 years ago, remember Tennessee had it locked down at midseason?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
They didn't win the division.
Nope.
Last year, did Jacksonville have it locked down at midseason at 8-3?
Seemed that way. Yeah.
They didn't win the division. You got to run the entire race. But this Houston team seems equipped to do so. Because last year was kind of a culmination. They got the right head coach in place after 2 one-and-dones. They had the quarterback, as you said, played at a level I'm not sure any of us have seen out of a rookie in a long, long time. And it just kept going from there. And now they get to build on it. But it's going to be interesting to see how Stefan Diggs fits in with a Nico Collins who had a breakout last year, Noah Brown, Tank Dell back from injury, and a second-year quarterback that better be ready.
Oh, yeah.
Receiver who likes to get the football.
You know, it's funny. I don't mean to kill Bryce Young because he was in a terrible spot in Carolina with very little talent around him, right? But if you're Carolina, like, you have to be having nightmares about the fact that you passed on C.J. Stroud right now.
Adam, it's the nightmare scenario that every GM and organization goes through about once you take your guy, what if the guy that was in contention that you could have taken did better?
Yeah.
But here's the weird part of the whole thing. I'm not sure Carolina has total buyer's remorse yet because, as you said, that situation devolved last year, and I'm not sure we saw it coming. I'll be frank with you. It's not a play on words. I thought Frank Reich was the right guy to be there and coach Bryce Young. But everything just kind of went. It's almost like Frank had lost his confidence. He was calling plays. Now he turned it over to Thomas Brown. Now he took it back. It just never worked. Receivers weren't as good as they needed to be other than Adam Thielen. Offensive line struggled like mad. They have to hit that reset button. But here's the weirdest part. Somewhere around midseason, Houston went to Carolina to play. Carolina beat Houston.
Yeah.
And Bryce Young outplayed C.J. Stroud.
Yeah, that's true.
One of those weird. So if I'm a Carolina fan, don't give up on Bryce Young yet. Hit the reset button. They put a lot of money in those offensive guards and interior offensive line to try and get him better. That's the old Drew Brees formula. Shorter quarterback, shore up the middle, center 2 guards so he can step up and not be pressured there and try and work from there. Those guards made a lot of money, and now they have to protect him.
Charles, I got to get to Deshaun Watson. And you said something in that last answer about maybe lacking confidence. And, you know, it's funny. I was still on the radio. I did a radio show for many years here in Cleveland. The last 2 years, I've been doing a podcast and other things. But it was my last couple of weeks on the radio when the Browns traded for Deshaun Watson. And I was on the air when the news broke. And I went bananas. I was like, oh, my God, the Browns finally, for their whole history, since Bernie Kosar have been looking for a quarterback, they finally got a quarterback. This guy in Houston, one of the best quarterbacks in the league. My gosh. Well, so far, it's been a disaster. He has been hurt. We knew a suspension was coming. It ended up being longer than we all thought. But he hasn't played well when he's been on the field. Now, he had a decent game against Tennessee last year, and he had that big second half against Baltimore. But outside of that, it's been a huge disappointment. Now, he's still young.
Yep.
You know he's talented. But I think the one thing, when the Browns got him, I was 100% certain he was going to be great because that's all I'd seen from him.
Yeah.
The one thing that I didn't think about, and it was a stupid mistake on my part, and I think for a lot of people too, is what happened off the field. And I'm not here to debate what did and didn't happen because only he and the women know what happened. But what I'll say is, no matter what happened, he's got to be, at least on some level, any human being would be, mentally scarred by everything he's been through, self-inflicted or not. And I think that was something that I just didn't think about. And I don't know how much of a factor that's been, but it's got to be at least somewhat of a factor in these first 2 years. Is that fair to say?
I think it's fair to say. It's fair to talk about because it's out there and these things happened. And as you said, it's not for us to discuss, debate, what have you. That's gone through the system. And here's where we are now. My biggest thing is I just hope that everyone is okay. I know I sound very Pollyanna about it, but that's where I am. That's what it's about. To me, I want people to be okay after going through experiences that they reported as horrific for them.
Yeah.
Okay. The other part that I'm wondering if we all, and I'm putting us all in the grouping, right? Some people go, I didn't miss. Okay, I got it. He didn't play at all his last season in Houston because he wanted out. So that's an entire NFL season of no play. He comes to Cleveland, as you mentioned, the suspension we knew was coming. All of a sudden, it was 11 games.
Yeah.
Now, I'm not debating whether 11 is the right number or the wrong number. It's 11 games, deal with it. Okay, you put yourself in that spot. But what people have forgotten, and one thing to keep in mind, is once that suspension began, he had to be out of the building and couldn't be around the team.
Yep.
So you're not building, growing. He couldn't even go through practice reps to try and knock some rust off. So by the time he came back, they eased it, what, 1 week before he was able to come back and play?
Basically, yeah.
And now he's back on the team. He's knocking off rust while he's playing. Okay, that's 2 straight seasons essentially lost.
Yep.
Now we start last year. Some promise early. He gets a shoulder injury before the Baltimore game. We all thought he was going to play. He thought he was going to play, didn't. And then the best game he played was at Baltimore.
Yeah.
He was a warrior in that game on the football field. And I don't know that any of us thought that he was going to miss the rest of the season that Sunday, Adam. I just don't.
No chance. Yeah.
And next thing you know, he did.
Yeah.
So you're talking 3 seasons of bumpity bump at best in terms of trying to play. I hope his injuries are healed well enough that he can have the offseason to get better, because that's what hurts people. If you're coming off a surgery, you're really not getting better prior to the season. You're getting healthy.
That's a good point.
Can he get healthy and better to go into this season? That's the big question.
Does it feel like a make or break year for him? Like, if he can't get back on track this year, is it never going to happen?
It feels like this to me, that if this year goes bumpy again, we would go into next year without optimism.
Yes, definitely.
See, ever since he's joined Cleveland, it's been nothing but optimism. Okay, this is the year it can happen. Okay, This is the year it can happen. If we go another year and we have something similar, whether it's injuries, bad play, whatever it is, right, and we don't get the Deshaun Watson we know is there, because we've seen it. He's been spectacular when he's at the top of his game. We would go into next season with question marks, and now Nick Caserio's got decisions to make, right? The McNair family is owning the team. DeMeco Ryans, where are we going? Are we looking different in the draft? Right now, we're not there yet. Right now, we are letting Joe Flacco go to Indianapolis, because the last thing you need is Joe Flacco standing on the sidelines and Deshaun Watson has a rough game.
Yeah, that's true. That's a big part of it. The Browns, let's talk about the Browns' most popular player, and that's Nick Chubb.
Yes.
Nick Chubb, that injury to him last year was devastating. People were in tears. He is beloved in this town, and I've been working in Cleveland now 14 years. By far the most popular player, more popular than Joe Thomas, Phil Dawson, Myles Garrett. Nick Chubb is everything you want in a football player, right? He does everything. Everything's a 10 with him.
Yes.
This is a devastating injury, right? 2 different torn ligaments in his knee. Now, I keep saying, and maybe I'm just trying to convince myself, I'm like, Adrian Peterson came back at a similar age, and he was still great, at least for a little bit of time, right? And I've said, to me, Nick Chubb is of that caliber. And maybe I'm going too far, but I think Nick Chubb is an all-time special back. That's what he is to me, but maybe I'm biased. What do you think? And you never know with the body of a human being, but how confident are you that he can bounce back?
It's a legit bias because he's put it out there for all of us to see.
Yeah.
And here's where, again, remember the old commercials when we were younger, probably in college, Adam?
Yeah.
I'm not a doctor, but I play one on TV.
Yeah, sure.
Well, let's make sure we're not playing doctor here, as you pointed out.
Fair. Yep.
Right? But if there's a person that we believe can grind and find his way back and be what he once was, we believe it is Nick Chubb. Now, we have to go back to him in college.
Yeah.
At my beloved University of Tennessee, a game in Knoxville. First time he blew his knee that badly.
Yep.
Worked his way back, cost him in the draft, of course, but he came back. And guess what? We've been able to watch the excellence and the greatness that is Nick Chubb. And now we're here again. Can he make that same type of comeback? We know medical science is way better than it was years and years ago. It keeps getting better all the time. But what's in that heart and that grind, very few people like Nick Chubb out there. If anyone's going to do it, it's going to be him. And if he does, well, I'll go, yeah, okay, we saw it coming.
Yeah.
But I just want to caution everyone, if we do see that, please step back for a moment and then say to yourself, what did it take for him to get this done? And when you contemplate that, the magnitude now goes, oh my goodness, he did all that, because we don't sit there and see the pain. We don't get to sit there and see him work his way through. We don't see the sessions he has to go through and how much it hurts to do it day after day. All we're going to see is the end result when he's back there running like a colt again. And we're all hoping to see that happen. I have no dog in the fight, Adam.
Yeah.
But I like watching excellence.
Yep.
I like watching great players produce.
Yeah.
I hope we get a chance to see Nick Chubb do that again.
Yeah, I'm with you. Jerry Jeudy was a guy who was highly thought of. He was drafted in the first round. He's been a perfectly okay wide receiver his first 4 years. He's not, I wouldn't say he's a bust.
No.
But he has not lived up to the promise that you thought. You thought he'd be an elite receiver, and to this point he hasn't been. He's a good number 2 guy, right? And they're asking him to be a number 2 guy behind a guy that he looked up to in Amari Cooper, and Amari Cooper's another guy like Nick Chubb who does everything the right way.
That's all
and
right.
Right, and is a great example to look to. But obviously there's more in there, you would think, with Jerry Jeudy. Do you think the Browns are a good fit, especially because of the Amari Cooper connection? And do you think we'll see the best of Jerry Jeudy in Cleveland?
I think it's an excellent fit, but there's one word that has to come into play in my mind, and that's the C word, consistency.
Mm-hmm.
Because he didn't have it in Denver.
No.
Who were his quarterbacks in Denver?
Not good.
Okay, how'd that go?
Yeah. No, not good.
And who's really the person? And then they get Russell Wilson. It looks like, okay, this is perfect for Jerry Jeudy receiving core. Turned out it wasn't. Okay, so he had to go through all of that. Had to go through coaching changes while he was there. Vic Fangio, defensive-oriented first when he was there. Change it up. Now here comes Sean Payton, but things aren't perking well on offense. He's battled a few injuries along the way. But now we're back to the consistency word, because he needs it from his quarterback, who we expect to be great, and Deshaun Watson, and he's got to do it himself. But he couldn't be in a better spot to be able to be in a wide receiver room with Amari Cooper.
Yeah.
Okay? With his talent, with a team that likes to run the football, so you should have better passing lanes when you do decide to throw it on non-throwing downs. He's got a lot going for him, and this is a great place to hit reset on his career and elevate. Wouldn't surprise me at all to see him do that, because he's in that great group of receivers that came out, not just from Alabama, but overall, the C.D. Lamb, right? Henry Ruggs, who, of course, now, because of the tragedy he perpetrated, brought it on himself, and a woman and her beloved dog lost their life. I will never sit there and condone by any stretch, but he's done. Mm-hmm. Okay? All those receivers were in that group with Jerry Jeudy. Yeah. This is his opportunity. This is his time.
You mentioned Russell Wilson there, and let me tell you something, Charles. I can't stand the Pittsburgh Steelers.
I'm shocked by that, Adam.
Well, what's funny is I actually grew up a Bengals fan, right? In New York, a Bengals fan, and I've been here 14 years. So as crazy as it is, I root for the Bengals and the Browns. It makes no sense. Nobody can explain it. I do. I lived here 14 years. What am I going to do? I cover the team. I want them to win. It's good for business. So obviously I despise the Steelers.
Sure.
But first of all, they're a great organization. I fully credit them that.
Right.
But I love what they've done this offseason. They need to get a receiver because they traded Deontay Johnson. But to upgrade, and I was not a Kenny Pickett guy. I did not believe in him. I was hoping they'd stick with him because I didn't think he was any good personally. I think Russell Wilson, for all the criticism he's gotten, some of it fair, in my opinion, a lot of it unfair, I think he's the perfect quarterback for the Pittsburgh Steelers because he was at his best when they ran the ball and played defense in Seattle, and that's what the Pittsburgh Steelers want to do. I think Mike Tomlin's the perfect coach. I love having Justin Fields as the backup. As much as it nauseates me, I think the Steelers hit a home run with getting those two guys. What do you think?
Yeah, I would agree with that for the reasons that you put out there. First and foremost, though, let's make sure we put it down accurately in terms of Pittsburgh running the football, because they've been an organization and it's a division where we talk about every team in the division running the football, right? Yeah. Every team in the division wants to play with that toughness, okay? Pittsburgh hasn't done it consistently in how many years?
No, they have not.
So last half of last year was the first time we saw them run the football like Pittsburgh's wanted to run it. Would 5 years be an accurate time frame?
Yeah, no, I think you're right.
Because if you go and look at the numbers, I don't have them in front of me, but I'd be willing to say then I would think that somewhere between the number 26 and 32, Pittsburgh ranked in rushing, let's say over the last 5 years.
Yeah,
If
no,
nothing
you're
else,
right.
it was an average,
Yeah.
right? That's not Pittsburgh Steeler football. But the last half of last season, Najee Harris ran as the number 1 pick, and a big back should.
Yep.
Jaylen Warren went from being kind of the guy who had stolen his thunder to being what he should be, the number 2 back who can give you a lot of juice coming off the bench. And the offensive line in a lot of ways solidified. Now, they've got to figure out who's going to play center because Mason Cole's not there and they wanted to upgrade anyway. Is Dan Moore really your left tackle, or are you going to take Broderick Jones and move him from right to left? And then what are you doing with the rest of it? Because I think they're fine at the guards, right? I think that they've solidified that part. And if they can continue to run the football without authority, it's right to the point you made. That's how Russell Wilson thrived in Seattle.
Yep.
This is how he can thrive in Pittsburgh. And to get Justin Fields as your quarterback of the future right there and that type of an offense, I'm with you. That's a home run. They have some holes to fill, yes.
Yes.
But being able to do that off the top, it also lessens your issues at receiver. If you're
no doubt.
Well, so we'll see what happens, but don't be surprised if they come in with a couple. And by the way, the Steelers' best receivers we've ever talked about in recent years were all second round and lower.
Yeah, it's so weird.
That's how they did it. That's how they continue to do it. Omar Khan, the GM, I doubt they'll take one in the first, but start looking for a receiver in the second, and then they take off from there.
Yeah, and especially in this draft. And I want to get to that in 1 second. But real quick before the draft, this division, I mean, every team finished over 500 last year. It's clearly the best division in football. I think you could probably make an argument that any of the 4 teams could finish first. How do you, pre-draft, how do you rank this division? I know it's hard, but what order would you put them in?
It is brutally hard in this division. But Baltimore still holds a spot for me because of the quarterback and that ability that he can continue to flash. And last year, let's be honest, that was their best opportunity to take out Kansas City. In a lot of ways, that was an upset losing that game. At home, the whole deal. They're still that team. I think Cincinnati's ready for a bounce back. They had a ton of injuries last year. I'll put it to you this way, Adam. If we look up this year and Joe Burrow goes through the entire preseason with no injury.
Be the first time.
Because what you miss is people say, well, he's not going to play in preseason anyway. No, you're right. He won't play in the preseason games, but he never practiced.
Right. Yeah.
That changes things. Pittsburgh, we know, got better and again got to the playoffs. And it cracks me up that when the media's always talking about, so Mike Tomlin kept his streak alive. They won 10 games and got to the playoffs last year in a year where they very easily could have gone south.
Oh, easily. Yeah.
Okay? And we know what Cleveland did. Are you kidding me? You and I were the only 2 people who didn't play quarterback last year for them. So give Kevin Stefanski, Andrew Berry their proper due because they had plans ready to go when things hit. Okay, Flacco was on their list to go look at in case it came up. All right? Drafting DeJuan Jones in the 4th round looked prescient. And they developed him because there were a lot of question marks about DeJuan Jones.
No doubt. Yeah.
And they developed him, and then he gets hurt. You got to mix and match. Chris Hubbard coming in. All these guys that you don't want to start, but you got to have on your ready list in case disaster happens. And it did. And Kevin Stefanski and crew fashioned the offense to work around it. The defense played great for most of the season under Jim Schwartz. That was one of the better coaching jobs, top to bottom, by a team last year that we've seen in the NFL in the last 10 years.
No doubt. And I'm stunned at this point that Kevin Stefanski and Andrew Berry have not gotten extensions yet. I would assume that's coming at some point.
But coming. I feel like
it better. It better. We finally get some.
Makes sense.
You need the stability.
They've earned it.
Yeah, no doubt. Last thing, Charles, the Browns, this is their final year of not having a first-round pick for the Deshaun Watson deal. They do have the 54th pick in the draft. They seem to be in a position where they could take the best player available. I wouldn't unless they. The only thing that would surprise me at 54 is a quarterback. Nothing else would surprise me. I know it's hard to predict what at 54 because it's so deep into the draft. But which way would you lean? All things being equal, knowing the strengths and weaknesses of this draft, where would you lean for the Browns in the late second round?
I'm going to tell you and it may surprise people, the runners are going to start coming off the board there.
Yeah.
And if you have your pick of the runners in this draft, I would go there. That's not a knock on Jerome Ford and the rest of the crew, but you have to hedge your bet on Nick Chubb.
Yeah, I agree.
You have to. And it's not an insult to him if you go get another runner. He understands.
Oh, yeah, sure.
All to do is fuel him to come back and tell that runner, you still got some time. I'm back. Okay? That'll be how Nick Chubb operates. But right there, with a team that wants to do it, control the football, control the tempo of the game, you may very well at 54 have your pick of a plethora of runners. And if you like someone, that'd be the spot. Jonathan Brooks from Texas coming off the ACL. Mm-hmm. He's not going to go in the first round. You know what I discovered in my research? He played 22 games at Texas. Okay. Yeah. He had 8 starts. All of them were last year because Bijan Robinson was there. Right. Roschon Johnson was there. So the tread is pretty good on his tire. Even though he's coming off of an injury. And out of his last 8 games at Texas, 5 100-yard games and a 200-yard game before he got hurt at TCU.
Yeah, pretty impressive. Pretty impressive. It's going to be fun. The 3 weeks away from the draft, Charles. It was such a pleasure talking with you. I really appreciate you taking the time. Thanks for joining me.
Adam, thanks for having me. All the best to you. Continued success. Last thing, you said New York. What part?
I grew up in Brooklyn. You grew up in New Paltz, right?
New Paltz.
Yeah. Man, it was awesome talking with Charles Davis. Great insight from him. Thank you all for joining me. Hope you enjoyed the interview. Hope you enjoyed the podcast. Please hit the subscribe button. Please hit the thumbs up. Thanks to Monzo for producing and Charles Davis for joining me. We'll talk to you next time. Where else but right here in the Bullpen with Adam the Bull, brought to you by Bet Rivers. See you, everybody.